Alright guys, we got this Dodge Avenger here with a coolant leak, and I know exactly where it's coming from. I've done quite a few of these. It's the inlet thermostat housing. You can see all the coolant there. And yeah, we're gonna replace this thing and go step by step. I'll show you guys how to do it. First and foremost, we're gonna mount the camera. We can remove the shield off top of the engine. It's just held in by some tabs that locks into rubber grommets, so we can remove that, and then we're gonna just get rid of all this stuff. Very first thing we're gonna do though is disconnect the battery before we even start working on it. Just here, 15 millimeter, I'm pretty sure, and we'll mount it, and then we'll get all this stuff out the way. All right, let's get going. I don't have much time. I do have a video on my channel where I did replace this, I think last year, the throttle body. Very detailed video. And there's something else to this particular vehicle, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, let's knock this out really quickly. Stuff a bag down in the throttle body, like a plastic bag. Press down, twist, twist. These tabs, yeah, press down, 2 twists, 1, 2, up. We're gonna leak some coolant, although a lot leaked out. You guys can see it leaking. You can actually see where it's leaking from. Stick our hand under here and see all the coolant leaking out from this housing. All right, let's disconnect the ECT sensor. Press in. Pull up. There should be a tab here on this sensor. Although we got a new one, there should be a tab here. There should be a tab right there, and this comes out counterclockwise, not clockwise. Like so, you rotate it counterclockwise and pulls up. As you can see, it's out already, but we'll take it out once we do it. Okay, let's undo these 3 holes, and then we'll unbolt this thing and take it out. We're gonna leak some coolant. There's still some in here. Reservoir, although it's more like overflow tank. See how it is. So look, we got coolant still. Let me get something under there really quick. All right, I got something to catch some of this coolant. I'll pull the hose off really quick and try to catch some of it. We're gonna waste some. I'll just hose it down on the ground. One thing I want to say, there is a drain, and they recommend you drain it on these vehicles, to drain it under the radiator. And I'll lift the carpet and I'll show you guys exactly where it's at. I'd rather lose a little coolant and just hose it down opposed to dealing with that drain on these older vehicles. You know, the last one, if I'm not mistaken, the last one I did, it broke off when I was removing it, and it was a nightmare. So I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, I'd rather lose a little coolant here and just hose it down on the ground. It's already spilled all over the engine. There's nothing we can do about that. Let's get this hose off, try to catch some of that coolant, and then we'll get those back 2 heater hoses off, and then we'll unbolt this thing and take it out. A quick tip, guys, if this hose is stuck on this housing, I'll show you guys what to do really quick. Just take some pliers, some channel locks, open them up, large enough setting to fit around that hose. All you want to do is just break the seal, like so. That's it. It works every single time. It's never not worked. So if one of these hoses stubborn, don't want to come off, and just break the seal, and it'll pull right out. All right, let's see what we got. I just got it sitting underneath that gear selector. So let's yeah, we're leaking coolant, but it's okay. That's unavoidable. I do got a wet vac that I use for these. I can just suck that stuff right out of there really quick, but it's not even necessary. Let's get the bottom hose out of our way. By the way, there's 2 thermostat houses on here. This is the primary, this is the secondary thermostat. You can also use these to easily remove these clamps if you don't have that tool. Alright, we still got coolant in the hose. So this is the main hose. This is the bottom hose on the bottom of that radiator. So we're gonna keep this propped up. So to try to save all the coolant we can inside the radiator. So if we let that fall down, most of the coolant will drain out the system. So we're gonna keep that hose propped up like so we can save a lot of that coolant. Better yet, I'll plug that up with something. I just plugged it with an old rag. You can find anything to plug it up. Just something I had on standby. So now let's remove those back heater hoses. Still gonna leak coolant out of that. That's coming from the heater core. Let's get those removed. All right, there's 3 bolts holding it in place. 1 bolt, 2 bolt, 10 millimeter, and there's the 3rd one. Right here. Better view. We got 1, 10 millimeter, 2, 3. They're all the same lengths, so don't worry about getting those mixed up. So we're gonna get a mallet and top on it before we remove it. All right, now that we got it free, there's an inlet tube that runs to the water pump to the back of this housing. That's what's holding it on right now. It has an O-ring on it. We're gonna swap that out as well. So just gonna wiggle it off. We gotta pry it off here. You can see it right there. That's the thermostat, just fell out. This is the secondary thermostat. There's the primary thermostat. Look at that. We lose the coolant. There's nothing you can do about that. Even if you drain the system, there will still be coolant there that's coming from the water pump. So yeah, I'm gonna hose that down. We're gonna hose this down, get that clearing out, and yeah, we're gonna swap out that O-ring and change this housing, clean all this up, this face. And yeah, here's the piece. Let's go inspect it. We can kind of see where it's leaking from. So it's leaking from underneath here somewhere. Sure. No signs of a crack or anything. And the seal is okay. If we look through here, we'll see the primary thermostat. Alright. Here's that ECT, just here. Let's see here a little bit. I'm trying to one hand this. It's coming. And my glove is slippery from the coolant all over it. But yeah, this is a very important sensor. This is the ECT. Guys, I highly recommend replacing this sensor whenever you're doing this job. Highly recommended. This sensor is vital to the performance of your vehicle. When the coolant that flows through this thermostat housing increases, the resistance of this sensor decreases. That data sends to the PCM. It not only controls the fans when to turn on and off, it controls the air fuel mixture and the timing. So highly recommend you replace this sensor, and we're gonna do just like that Jace right now. All right, here's the old piece. So just push the thermostat inside of here for right now, and here's the new one. Let's see what all it comes with. Let me mount the camera. Everything should be in place. We got our new ECT sensor. Both of our O-rings. All right, let me get this set up. All right, here's both O-rings, but if you look at here, we know one O-ring is for the water pump inlet tube. The second one should be for the ECT sensor. Also, you look at here, there's a tab on here. It goes directly like so. There's a slot for it here. Just seats in the slot like that. Gotta be careful, you want it to pop out. So we'll make this seat in here before try to install it. So it is holding. You hold it vertically, so you don't have to worry about it just pushing, falling out. So we can't get it up on the engine. But I want to make sure. I don't see why this thing comes pre-installed with a rubber O-ring or an O-ring. So there's a tab here. We're just gonna press that tab down and see. Spin counterclockwise. There's an O-ring on it. All right, we can see it back in there. It has an O-ring. All right. Alright, that's back in. Let's get that back in. Let's clean up that facing. Oh, I want to show you guys also the O-ring size. So this is just a spare O-ring. Guys, any event you lose this O-ring, here's the size of it here. Just want to make sure it's barely fitting there, not pushing it. This is in inches. It's barely touching. Yep. Alright, and there's a ton of kits out there where they come with an assortment, and I try to keep me some of every single size here. So just great to have on standby every single size that you can think of for a kit like this. It just folds over. All right, let's clean out the facing. All right, let's clean the facing off for so we can install that thermostat housing. Also, really quick, I want to note, if you look at the new thermostat, it has the bleeder on it, whereas this is the secondary thermostat. If you look at here, there's no bleeder on it. It's probably on the first one. If you look down in here, I'll eventually remove it and see. But yeah, I see it. It's on this one. You can see it right there. There it is on this one. But not on the secondary thermostat. That's an important part of the aeration of the system. You don't have to worry about purging it or bleeding it, and we'll get there. We'll talk about that when we get there. But if we look in this one, quite sure it's on here as well. Yep, there it is. All right, let's clean the facing off, and then we're gonna install the O-ring, this O-ring here on that new. So I'm gonna use this wire wheel to clean here, or just stuff with some old rubber gloves I had, some used gloves I had, just stuff those ports so I can clean up here real quick. Mount the camera. All right, now that that's clean, we can remove this O-ring. Take this out. What I do want to note about this, this cleaned around here, the diameter here and here is the most important part of this entire thing. Those are the only two things you should be focusing on, just making sure these surfaces are clean around this port and this thermostat port here. That's the main focus. So you're also gonna get some air, blow out these holes and make sure no debris got in them to stop the bolts from seating. So let's get a pick and remove this. It's too good. Just want to unseat it. So it don't look bad, it's not flat, but of course we're gonna replace it with the new one right here. Oh man, it just fell. All right, old one doesn't look bad compared to the new one, but of course we're gonna clear it out. This looks wider, if you can see, compared to this one. They recommend that you use some soapy water when lubricating these O-rings before you install them. I'm just using the dasher oil, should be fine, no issues. But soapy water is recommended, and I'll show you guys here. All right, that's pretty good. So I should do the one hand there still. Supposed to mount the camera. There's one hand in it. and then opening that mouth up and just getting it to go around that hole. There you go. All right, nice fit. Okay, I guess we can make sure the thermostat is in that housing correctly, and then push it up against here and get some bolts started. Let me get some air first and blow those holes out. Let's make sure thermostat is seated there. Remember, we're gonna come at an angle to seat that tube from the water pump inside this house, and we're gonna come at an angle and then make sure this is seated properly before we mount up. If we don't have this seated in this tab, imagine just seating it here. Look, it's gonna leak. If we just have it here, it's going to be here. If you want, you can put a very, very thin coat of oil around here, since you may have to shift this on that surface to mount the bolts inside the hose, but should be fine. I just think it's okay. It's not gonna tear or put a rip inside this rubber, but it should be fine. But you could, if you want to, just a thin coat. One last thing before we install this, you could put some grease to hold this in here, but once you go in with it, if you look, this is facing towards the 9 o'clock. Even if it falls out, you know to go back in at 9 o'clock, it's gonna fit right back inside. It's actually facing towards the bolt hole, directly towards it, if you look at it. So you won't mess up. You have your bearings there. All right, so we wanna go back and onto that tube first from the water pump. All right, guys, time for us to torque them down before we attach all the hoses. I'm torquing them down to 159 inch-pounds. 159 inch-pounds. Plug our sensor up, and we can reattach the rear hoses really quick. Trying to save some time, so I'll do that off camera. And right now. Then I'll come back when I do these holes. Alright, we got those two on. Alright, let's get the lower hose put on, and then I'll put the top hose on, and then I'll be back. Just trying to save footage now. Alright, we got those hoses on. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get some of this out of here. I'll show you guys. I was gonna hose it down, but I'm just gonna get my blower and blow it off. Better. All right, let's pour some coolant in here before I attach everything back up. We'll just pour some coolant just to get an initial or visual to see if we got anything leaking before we put everything back. So let me do that right now. All right, we're just inspecting right now, making sure we're not leaking from anywhere. If you look at this, how this is pitched to go directly down inside of that coolant thermostat housing or thermostat adapter housing, coolant adapter housing, whichever you prefer. Also, I did tug on these to make sure they were tight. I believe their torque specs are 106 inch-pounds. Hey guys, it just dawned on me. Somebody poured some Dex coolant and used Dex coolant in his engine. She's been driving like this with it. Obviously, somebody did some work on this vehicle. I don't believe this came with Dex Cool. It should have been something like this. Dex Cool is an OAT coolant. This is an HOAT coolant. They shouldn't mix. So I'm not going to use this. I'm just gonna go grab some more Dex Cool and put in here. All right, guys. You know what? I'm just gonna do it the right way. The only way I know how to do things. I'm gonna have to remove the drain valve and drain all the fluid out of here. I'm just gonna put the right coolant in here. I'm not gonna use that Dex Cool, so I have to get all of this out of here. So yeah, it sucks, but I'm gonna hopefully try to catch all of it all and save it for something else, another application. But yeah, I'm not gonna reinstall the Dex Cool. It shouldn't be in here. So this is what this requires, and we're just gonna go just with that. So all right, let me get under here and get ready to drain it out. So I'm gonna remove this cover, this valance, or this shield. These are 1/4-inch bolts or 7mm. Right there, and they surround the perimeter of this Phillips right here. But there's two 10mm right there. As I was prepping to unscrew the drain cock so I can remove the coolant or drain the coolant out, I noticed I had a leak right at that inlet tube that runs from the water pump, right at where that O-ring seat set inside of that coolant adapter or thermostat housing. There was a leak there, and of course I'm transparent. I have to show everything, and I'll show you guys what caused this leak and what to do and what not to do, especially when you're purchasing one of these keep coolant adapter kits or these thermostat housings, the cheap one, the $30 one like we purchased. They all will work fine. I'll just show you guys what you need to do to make sure or to ensure that you don't leak right now. As you can see here, I have to remove the coolant adapter. All you have to do if this happens to you, just remove the bolts. Do not remove those rear heater core hoses. Just remove the two front hoses and you'll be fine. Just pull it off inlet tube that comes from the water pump right there and swap the O-ring out. That O-ring was too small. You guys see me doing the measurements earlier, and I'll show you guys the calibrations right now. Once again, I'm going to fast forward through this process, but that's the O-ring that should go on there. I just rotated it quite a few times, made sure it was clean. That's the one that came off there, the factory O-ring. And look at the size difference from both O-rings. The one that came with it is the smaller one. It's the cheap knockoff kit, the $30 kit. And you can expect you get something that's incorrect, and it was the incorrect O-ring, too small. Coolant was just pushing past that inlet tube. So just use the factory O-ring. It still is fine. Just rotate it quite a few times and clean it off. It's gonna go in there and it's gonna seal that thing up correctly. So let me fast forward through some of this so you guys can see me just reinstall everything back, and we can just move on and get the video closed out. But yeah, totally the wrong O-ring that came with the kit. Here I'm showing foot-pound torque wrenches. If you don't have an inch-pound torque wrenches, you can just use the foot-pound torque wrench and torque them down to 13 foot-pounds. Each one of those bolts. Here I'm showing a modern torque wrench and a vintage one. The vintage one there works just as well as the modern ones. It actually have a very accurate reading on those things. But yeah, 13 foot-pounds with the torque wrench foot-pound. Here I'm showing that inlet tube that runs from the back of the water pump. Since I was on the vehicle, just giving it an inspection, and I advise or recommend you inspecting yours as well, making sure it's not rusted out and leaking there, and it's perfectly fine. No leaks or no issues with that inlet tube that runs on the back side of that engine from the water pump all the way over to that coolant adapter where we installed that O-ring on. That's that pipe right there, that inlet tube. Here, I removed that shield, and I'm showing you guys that you don't have to remove every single bolt on it, just enough to get it down, well, most of that perimeter, just to get it down and shift it out of your way so you can reach the drain cock, as you can see it right there. And remember, those things be stubborn coming out of there. You want to rotate it counterclockwise all the way around till it stops, and then rotate it back 1/8 of an inch if you want to remove it. But I'm just going to rotate it all the way until it stops, so until the coolant can just flow out of that bottom port or bottom hole of that radiator. I don't want to remove it totally. Of course, if you remove it, you will want to replace the O-ring on it. But yeah, I'll show you guys that right now. Just using some WD-40 here or any kind of penetrant, just a little bit around that diameter of that drain cock, anything that helps break that O-ring or break that seal, or when we undo it or unscrew it. it's done draining. We know all the old coolant is out of here. It does have some water in the system, but don't worry about that. We'll fix that. So. We got it shut. All right, before I put that shield back on, we're gonna make sure we don't have any leaks at that drain cock. And we'll pour a little coolant in. Although we know there's some water in the system still, show you guys what we're gonna use. You know, we don't have to get all the water out because we're gonna actually top it off with some distilled water. But so instead of using 50-50, you're just gonna use full strength because there is some water in the system. Just use full strength and we'll top it off with some distilled water. So let's pour some of this in here right now. We can actually pour some of this in here, make sure we're not leaking at the drain cock. So we'll pour some of this in first, just to make sure we don't have any leaks down there since we closed it up. Since this is going in the system, we do know the radiator is empty though. All right, let's do it right now. So we'll use this first. This is only $1.29 compared to that expensive coolant. All right, no leaks, so we'll put this shield back on and we'll lower the vehicle down. And also stick our hand behind here where it was leaking from before. Completely dry now. There's been water sitting in the system here, so we know we had something here. All right, our piece is back up, just how it was. And now we're gonna remove the jack and jack stand and let it back down. And then we'll start adding coolant. All right, we're back down. We can start adding coolant now. We're back down. All right, it's been about 30 minutes since I added some coolant. And before, it didn't even take that long. I can just take my hand, put it back here and touch where that pipe that's running from the water pump, the inlet pipe runs into this coolant adapter. And you can feel around the rim and it'll just be very wet, nothing. I mean, it was almost instant. I seen it dripping once I installed it the first time. Now it's nothing, and it's been here for a minute. You normally will see something. So wrong O-ring. They sent out with this part, and I gave you guys the measurements. So you want to make sure you replace or install the correct O-ring. Otherwise, it's gonna leak. Everything looks really good. Rinsed it off. Used the blower to blow everything just about dry. It's extremely nice today. It's about 75 degrees right now, so it's really nice out. All right, I'll start piecing everything back off camera. I may just do a time lapse really quick and let you guys see me work. All right, we're done. Everything back. Just a couple things I want to note. Make sure This is, those tabs are in those slots correctly on both sides of this air filter housing. Make sure those are locked. Make sure the duct on the throttle body is in that slot as well. You see on top of it, as well as here. Other than that, yeah, we're all good. We should be able to start. Should be able to start now and top this thing off, and the coolant reservoir. You don't have to worry about bleeding this. This has a de-aeration system built inside of it. You may have to top it off eventually after a few starts or a few driving around. Just kind of keep an eye on that, but no need to purge. Has a de-aeration system built into this system, and I'll show you guys that. All right, let's start it up and top it off and inspect for leaks. So far, so good. All right, we're gonna let it run. We'll add some more as it go down, but I'll let it run for a while now. Zero leaks. Nothing down there. All right, we're gonna let it run. Like I said, it's pretty nice out here. So let's get some temperature up on this thing. Temperature low right now. Quite sure when that thermostat opens up for both of them, I'll have to add some more coolant. All right, guys, it's been about 30 minutes. Temperature is up, zero leaks. We're gonna remove the cap and see how much lower did it drop. Zero leaks. All right, let's remove the top. Let's shut the vehicle off and remove the cap carefully. Let's get a towel or something. This thing is hot. Just the first turn. Be careful, it's super hot. Pressure off of it. All right, we're up for right now. This is where we're, so we'll fill that up and we should be good. All right, let's fill this up hot. It's hot now. All right, shut that off. We got the right coolant. Everything's copacetic. All right, so now that we're pretty much topped off, we may have to add some more coolant in a day or so. Just keep an eye on it. There, can put our hands on here. We're dry. Just be careful. It's super hot here. Just touch underneath that pipe. Nothing. Zilch. Nothing. That was our only spot where it was most likely to leak at because of that O-ring. Nothing. Everything's all good. Let's just start it one more time. Perfect. All right, there we go. Another successful video for the channel, guys. Well, hope you guys found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Terrence, I'm out.